He, who created heaven and earth, out of his power and might.
The poet's art, was from the start, a branch of wisdom's mighty tree. The task of poetry is holy, as all godly men agree.
I, Rustaveli, wrote this poem, a man whom fate would not release. Out of a tale, I made a poem, a sparkling diamond centerpiece. An ancient Persian tale I took, and in the Georgian tongue retold. Until that time, it was an unset pearl, from hand to hand it rolled.
A lake of ebony I used as ink, my reed was like a dart. Whoever hears, the lines I have written, a spear will pierce his heart.
Shota Rustaveli. The night in the panther's skin. Avtandil sets forth in quest of the night. May, Diagnose by Ezra, the wise, be my witness at this time. That it's a pity when the rose, is encrusted with frost and rime. When the slender one, more beautiful than rubies, guiltless of crime, turns wanderer and leaves his home, on a quest he believes sublime.
Avtandil travelled over the plain, as fast as if he had wings. He travelled far into foreign lands, and saw there marvellous things. But separation from his son, had left his heart wounded with stings. He said, if she were near, I'd not shed the tears, grief usually brings.
Snow had fallen, freezing and bruising, the rose so young and slender. At times, he clutched his knife, as if his own heart he meant to render. He said, destiny has increased my grief, and turned my heart tender. I've given up joy, harp, lyre and flute, I have had to surrender.
In the absence of its son, the rose shrank and faded more and more. He told his heart to be patient, so it never completely tore. He journeys through foreign places, up mountains and along the shore. He befriends wayfarers, his pleas for tidings, they could not ignore.
He cries while searching, his tears, a river flowing into the sea. The ground seems, like a couch to him, his arm a soft pillow might be. He thinks, beloved, though I've traveled far, my heart has stayed with thee. And a death suffered in thy service, would be like a joy to me.
He journeyed over the face of the whole earth, he went everywhere. Beneath all of heaven, there was no place, that had not seen him there, but he met none, who had even heard of the night, who was his care. Meanwhile, 3 years had almost passed, leaving only 3 months to spare.
He arrived in a certain dreary country, exceedingly bleak, for a month he saw no one at all, no one with whom he could speak. Vis, nor Ramin, saw such woes, as fate on him decided to wreak. Night and day he thought of Tanadin, and the night, she'd bade him seek.
He reached a resting place at the top of a mountain, a flat ledge. Looking down on a plain, that took a week to cross without a sledge. At the foot of the mountain flowed a thin stream, its banks lined with sedge. Both sides, were covered thickly with forest, down to the river's edge.
He rode along the stream, counting the days as a condemned man would. He had 2 months of questing left, he sighed at this, as well he should. What if I have to go home, without finding him, as well I could. No man can be born again of himself, or turn evil to good.
He became thoughtful, to many vacillations he had to yield. He thought, if I fail, I'll be mad, I spent so much time in the field. What can I say to my star, I, the one knight to whom she appealed? About the man I seek, it seems, even gossipers' lips are sealed.
If I return not, and spend more time, in the quest than I have set, spend more than 3 years, and still no tidings of him manage to get, the time agreed on with Shermadin will pass, his cheeks will be wet. He'll go and tell the king, some unknown evil end, I must have met.
He'll tell him of my death, as I myself strictly bade him to do. They too will start weeping and mourning, full of bitterness and rue. Then, after travelling everywhere, I'll return out of the blue. He starts to weep, as, such thoughts in his consciousness begin to brew.
He said, O God, how could your right judgment of me, somehow turn wrong? Why have you turned to futility, a quest that took me so long? Why have you rooted joy from my heart, and let nested grief grow strong? Now, I won't be able to stop weeping, tears will come in a throng.
He told himself, better than living a shamed life, will be to die. If you return, you'll be met by her, bright as the sun in the sky. When she asks you about that night, you'll feel wretched, and want to cry. Thus he mused, walking next to the swampy wood, where the ground was dry.
He said, be patient. And thought about things in a different way. Let my heart not weaken, let me not die before my dying day. Without God I can do nothing. Tears are vain, as is what I say. No one can change destiny, nothing comes which is not on its way.
I know every place under heaven, because I have been through there. But regarding that man, no word of him did I hear anywhere. Doubtless, they who called him an apparition, were just being fair. Now tears avail me not, and useless weeping's something to beware.
Avtandil came down the mountain, crossed the stream, gave his horse full rein. Lost in a dream of rattling stirrups, the knight cantered toward the plain. All of his power and pride had been spent, and had been spent in vain. The field of his face, jet-shaded, was beautiful and without stain.
He resolved to return, he sighed and groaned, he struggled with his mind. He turned from the plain and followed the road, as though he were half blind. In the last month, no human at all, had he been able to find. He'd seen beasts but not chased them, even those of the horrible kind.
Though he'd roamed like a beast, thus far, not worrying about eating, now, as is the wont of men, hunger made thoughts of all else fleeting. He killed game, arms longer than Rostam's, if they were competing. He kindled fire with flint, and out of reeds prepared his seating.
He let his horse graze, while he roasted the meat, until it was done. Suddenly, he saw 6 horsemen, coming towards him at a hard run. He said, they look like brigands. This region's a place good people shun. What other reason could explain their riding? I can think of none.
He went to meet them, with bow and arrow in hand, ready to shoot. 2 men were leading a third, looking back as if they feared pursuit. The third was nearly dead, the amount of blood he'd lost was acute. It seemed, a branch of some battle, had borne bitter and bloody fruit.
He called, say who you are, I took you for thieves a moment prior. They said, be calm. Help us, please, and put out your combative fire. If you can't help, please at least grieve with us, our situation dire. Weep with us. Scratch your cheeks. Our dear brother is about to expire.
Avtandil came closer, he spoke to the men who were grieving so. They told him their story. As they spoke their tears continued to flow. The more our brother weakens, the more our grief continues to grow. Our town's far away in Hathaeti, a name you doubtless know.
We heard of good hunting grounds, and went forth eagerly to the chase. We rested by a stream, countless soldiers, were with us at that place. The hunting pleased us, for a month, we didn't leave our streambank base. We killed beasts, on the plain, the mountain, on the ridges, every place.
We brothers were the best shots, we made the archers with us feel shame. And after that, the 3 of us, vied with each other's shooting game. I'll kill best, I am better than you, each of us began to claim. We quarreled among ourselves, each thinking, the others were to blame.
We ordered all the soldiers, loaded with deer hides, to leave today. Let us see who of us, has the strongest arm, we began to say. We alone stayed behind, and hunted, no one else has seen us slay. We have killed only the game we saw, with no slaves to drive the prey.
There are only the 3 of us, and these 3 armor-bearers too. We let them stay, when the solders left, not certain what we would do. We hunted over the plains, in thickets and glens the beasts we slew. We slaughtered the wild ones, until not even the smallest bird flew.
Suddenly he appeared, morose and gloomy of visage, a knight. He sat on his horse, his black stallion, the way a demigod might. His head and trunk were clad in a panther skin, both starry and bright. Beauty such as his had never before been in anyone's sight.
We gazed upon his brilliance, it seemed to us to burn every eye. We said, he is a sun on earth, we need not seek it in the sky. We really wanted to capture him, and dared each other to try. That is the reason we moan and weep, that is the reason we sigh.
I was eldest, taking him captive was thus accorded to me. My next brother asked for his horse, as great a mount as you could see. He, the wounded, asked to subdue the knight, he got us to agree. We rode towards him, and he rode toward us, as serenely as could be.
Ruby and crystal, made the pale roses of his face, seem to dim. His great beauty, made our desire for his capture, rise to the brim. He paid us no heed, his look was still impassive, not at all grim, he bruised to ripeness with his whip, any who spoke tartly to him.
Our brother went on. We left it to him, and further did not go. Our brother said, "Stop!" and grabbed the knight as one grabs a worthy foe. We thought, our brother the match of a swordless knight. We didn't know. He struck our brother on the head with his whip, and we saw blood flow.
With a stroke of his whip, he cleft our brother's head nearly in two, he was like a corpse, earth brought to earth, there was nothing we could do. It was our youngest brother, the strange knight leveled and almost slew. He rode past us, bold, severe and haughty, his sword he never drew.
He turned not back again, quietly, without haste, his way he took. And, lo! There he rides, as serenely as the sun and moon, just look. The brothers pointed him out, although with weeping their bodies shook. Avtandil could only make out his great steed, blacker than a rook.
When he saw that horse, the tears within Avtandil started to dry. He had been questing for 3 years, and the sun on that horse was why. A man, who's about to get his wish, who believes success is nigh, no longer needs to remember past woes, his mind will let them fly.
Avtandil said, "Brothers, I am a wanderer without a place. I left my home to seek that knight, who had vanished without a trace. Now from you, I have learned where he is. I'm near the end of my chase. May God never give you more cause to grieve. May you thrive in his grace.
I have met my heart's desire, with the sight of that knight in the trees. So, may God not let your brother suffer more wounding or disease." He showed the brothers his resting place, "I beg you, stay at your ease, give your wounded one, rest in the shade, do here whatever you please."
Then he spurred his horse and galloped away, with no more time to talk. He seemed to fly over the ground, as fast as might an unstrung hawk. Like the moon on its way to meet the sun, Avtandil did not balk. He was like a moon, consumed by the sun's light, like a grassy stalk.
As Avtandil drew nearer, he thought, how best to approach the knight. Reckless address, he thought, might provoke the stranger to raging spite. He needed to approach the task at hand, the way a wise man might. He must not do anything rash, but keep his mind tranquil and bright.
Since, the knight ahead is so unreasoning, and his mood so chill, that he suffers no one to speak, or even look at him at will. If I accost him out here, one of us will die and one will kill. If he's the one, remaining alive, he'll hide with even more skill.
Avtandil said, "Why should I suffer, for the sake of a vain quest? Whatever he is, it cannot be that he has no home, no nest. I will let him go now, and within whatever walls he finds rest, I'll seek him there, if my powers are up to this ultimate test."
2 days and 2 nights, they kept riding, one in front and one behind. Both were weary, day and night, neither thought of the food they might find. They rode without stopping, the thought of a pause never came to mind. From their eyes, hot tears flowed, moistening the plains. They rode as if blind.
Finally, they came to a cliff, on the evening of the third day. In the cliff was a cave, a stream flowed down from it, a little way. Rushes edged the stream, how many it was not possible to say. And trees so high, that the eye could not see, their topmost branches sway.
The knight passed the rocks, and made for the cave, whence the stream had its source. Avtandil rode to the tallest tree, got down and tethered his horse. He climbed high enough, so that he could see the entire watercourse. He watched, as the strange knight kept riding, shedding manly tears perforce.
The knight in the panther skin, rode out of the woods, his face was grave. A black-caped maiden appeared at once, tears began her cheeks to lave. Her abundant tears were like a river, flowing wave after wave. The knight dismounted and embraced the maiden, who'd come from the cave.
The knight said, "Sister Asmat, all our bridges are lost in the sea. We couldn't find her, the one, for whom fires burn hotly in me." Beating his breast with his hands, with his tears raining down, so spoke he. The maiden swooned. They wiped away each other's tears repeatedly.
The forest itself, turned thicker now, from the tearing of their hair. The youth, the maid, and the maid, the youth, each embraced each other there. They wailed, they lamented, the cliffs re-echoed their sounds of despair. Avtandil gazed in wonder at them, from his temporary lair.
The maiden calmed down, mastered the pain, that held her heart in a rack. She led the knight's mount into the cave, and took off its noble tack. She unbuckled the knight's armor, from his arms and legs, front and back. Then knight and maiden went in the cave, and the day passed into black.
How can I learn their story? Avtandil wondered too, no avail. Day dawned, the maiden came forth, in the same black cape, her face was pale. She put the bridle on the horse, cleaned it with the end of her veil. She saddled the horse, and noiselessly carried out the knight's chain mail.
It seemed to be the custom of that night, never at length to rest. The black-mantled maiden tore her thick hair, she wept and beat her breast. The knight embraced and kissed her, then mounted his horse and rode off west. Asmat, already gloomy, became, it seemed, by despair possessed.
Avtandil saw clearly the face of the knight in the panther coat. He was a son of heaven, with a young mustache, no beard of note. His smell was the welcome fragrance of poplars, on the wind afloat. That knight could kill a lion as easy as lions kill a goat.
The knight rode out the same road he'd come in by the previous day. He passed the rushes, rode onto the plain that stretched so far away. Avtandil thought of following him, but decided he should stay. He said, "God has managed this well for me. I will not say him nay."
How could God have done any more, to make sure that my quest goes right? I'll make the maiden tell me the tale of him I wanted to smite. I will tell her my story as well, and make sure she feels no fright. I am not willing to let myself kill or be killed by that knight. He, who created heaven and earth, out of his power and might.
The poet's art was from the start a branch of wisdom's mighty tree. The task of poetry is holy, as all godly men agree.
I, Rustaveli, wrote this poem, a man whom fate would not release. Out of a tale, I made a poem, a sparkling diamond centerpiece. An ancient Persian tale I took, and in the Georgian tongue retold. Until that time, it was an unset pearl, from hand to hand it rolled.
A lake of ebony I used as ink, my reed was like a dart. Whoever hears the lines I have written, a spear will pierce his heart.
Shota Rustaveli. The knight in the panther's skin.